This meeting of the Lakewood, special meeting of the Lakewood City Council for Monday, or excuse me, Wednesday. I'm into my routine without a script. December 2nd, to order. Madam Clerk, would you please call the roll?
Councilmember Boki.
Present.
Councilmember Brandstetter.
Here.
Councilmember Farmer.
Here.
Councilmember Moss.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Whalen.
Present.
And Mayor Anderson.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. We only have one agenda tonight at this special meeting, and that is to go over our legislative agenda. We wish to be proactive in communicating with you as our legislators prior to session. As you know from your experience, has been our practice. We don't want to be strangers showing up at the last minute. I see Representative-elect Bronski is signing on.
Hello.
Hello. Greetings. Welcome. We just convened the meeting. You haven't missed anything.
Okay, perfect.
First of all, since there are at least going to be one, there's at least going to be one new representative present tonight at this meeting. I thought we'd go through some introductions as impersonal as they can be over Zoom. I'm Don Anderson. It's my privilege to be mayor of the city of Lakewood. With us tonight are, if you please wave, I guess you most of you have your names up. Deputy Mayor Jason Whalen, Councilmember Linda Farmer, Councilmember Mary Moss, Councilmember Mike Brandstetter, Councilmember John Simpson, and Councilmember Paul Boki. And I know Representative-elect Bronowski, we have seen your campaign material, but if you'd like to introduce yourself a little more formally, we'd appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. So Representative-elect Dan Bernowski here in the 28th. I live in Lakewood. I'm a 20-year firefighter with previously Lakewood Fire Department, now West Pierce Fire and Rescue. And I am excited to work with all of you and serve our community in this capacity as a state legislator. Thank you very much.
Well, we're glad you could join us tonight, and Representative Kirby and Senator Conway, we're glad that you could join us. And I think that with that, what we'd like to do is a kind of a forum is present our legislative agenda, but we also want to hear what some of you as our elected representative have as your priorities for this session. And don't hesitate to use the raise hand function along the way. When we're running through the legislative agenda, I'd like to interrupt and give you opportunity to ask questions. So with that, I would like to introduce our contract lobbyists, Brianna Murray and Shelley Helder, who are going to run through what we have adopted as our priorities for this next legislative session.
Great, thank you, Mayor. And I am going to kick us off. I'm Brianna Murray, as the mayor indicated, and am working with Shelley as serving as the city's contract lobbyist. I'm going to ask Brianna to pull up the city's legislative priorities document. And actually, Brianna, if you can scroll down and go to the Lakewood Landing one pager, that will be where we start this evening. But before we dive in, I wanted to just set a little bit of context for our discussion and for our legislative priorities. We are all at the City of Lakewood very aware of the challenges that you all have this next session. The fact that you will be meeting in almost entirely virtual format, which we expect will make your jobs very difficult, and that you will be focused on responding to the COVID-19 pandemic, tackling significant issues like racial equity and police reform, and economic recovery. I think I want to start by saying that on all of those very pressing issues that we as the Lakewood team, and that includes myself, Shelley, the city manager, John, mayor, and council, really encourage you all to reach out to us and we're happy to be a resource on any of those issues. I'll note that the city manager was very actively involved with AWC in the development of the Association of Washington Cities Police Reform Agenda. And we're happy to be your partner and resource through those conversations. Additionally, we are, like many of you, very closely watching what the federal government is doing as far as developing a response package to COVID-19 and are hopeful that they will provide more resources to the state and the local level. Tonight, though, we really want to focus on those items that are specific to the city of Lakewood and the requests that you won't be hearing from other stakeholders necessarily, but are pretty specific to just those living within the city.
Brianna, just a moment here. I'd like to welcome Representative Levitt. Glad you could join us. We're just getting started on running through our legislative agenda, and feel free to use that wonderful raise hand feature if you have any questions along the way, and we'd be happy to interrupt.
Yeah, great to be here. Thank you so much.
Great. So yeah, I was just providing some introductory commentary before we go into our legislative agenda. And I would just want to add that we work pretty hard to provide you all with an organized legislative agenda that outlines our top priorities, as well as a legislative manual that goes through the many other issues that we join others in supporting or otherwise monitor through the legislative process. What that results in is an over 30-page document that you all received in advance of today's meetings. Fortunately, we really just want to focus on the legislative agenda, the one-page top priority items, and many of the other items in the policy manual are items that we will be monitoring and engaging on in a support fashion throughout the legislative session. So with that, we'll turn to that legislative agenda. And Brianna, if you're able to share the screen to bring up the Lakewood Landing piece in particular. So the first item on the legislative agenda is this request around the Lakewood Landing. This is a multi-year endeavor that the city has been working on with many of you. And I just have to start by first offering a huge thank you for the progress that we have made on this issue thus far. I want to start by just talking about what Lakewood Landing is, where it's at, refresh all our memories, and get Representative-elect Bronowski up to speed. So Lakewood Landing is a site that is south of the 512 I-5 interchange, and it is frontage that borders I-5 on the west side of I-5. And there is a map there that hopefully Brianna can zoom in on to show the specific location. This is one of the few sites left in the state where you have two major state routes, I-5 and 512, and there's not been substantial redevelopment. We believe that one of the reasons substantial redevelopment has not occurred on this site is because there's currently a WSDOT maintenance facility located there. That is not the highest and best use of this land. And we believe that the WSDOT maintenance facility would be better suited elsewhere. And frankly, WSDOT agrees with us. However, in order to move that WSDOT facility to another location requires upfront funding. And that upfront funding is a disincentive for a developer choosing to come in and redevelop this site. So for the past several years, we have been looking at different financing tools and mechanisms to come up with the upfront funding to overcome that hurdle to allow this site to be redeveloped. If it were to be redeveloped as the city has envisioned, it would include affordable and market rate housing, early learning facilities. It could be an entertainment complex. It would have office space. There's really a world of possibilities, and all of those uses would generate an increase in sales and property taxes compared to what is there today. last legislative session, we made substantial progress on this on this project. There was a bill that was introduced that would have authorized local revitalization financing to several jurisdictions. And Representative Kirby, Representative Levitt, you guys worked in the House to help ensure that the bill was crafted in a way that would really work for this site, and we greatly appreciate your efforts on that. The bill inevitably did not pass. It would have had a substantial impact on the state budget, and given the status of the state budget as a result of COVID-19, it is perhaps a good thing that it did not pass. However, it also meant that the financing for this particular project went away, and so we're looking at some other creative solutions that will not have an impact on the state budget. And the one we're working on that seems most appropriate and has the greatest likelihood of chance of passing also fits with the legislature's priority to engage in economic recovery following this pandemic. Brianna, if you want to scroll down to the next part of this one pager, it explains a little bit more about tax increment financing. The City of Lakewood is partnering with the Association of Washington Cities, the Washington Economic Development Association, the Washington Public Ports Association, and many other stakeholders to bring forward a tax increment financing proposal this next session that will be sponsored by Representative Davina Dorr. The general policy, the general principle around tax increment financing is it allows the revenue that would be generated from private development to be used to fund the upfront infrastructure that is needed in order to allow the development to take place. So what that means in this case is that the revenue that would be generated through the redevelopment of the Lakewood Landing site would be able to be used on the upfront end to be able to relocate the WashDOT facility to a more appropriate location and allow the redevelopment to move forward. We've worked with several different attorneys and committee staff to draft the bill this year that is very thoughtful in terms of not impacting the state budget and ensuring that there's strict criteria around the different types of projects that can move forward. And so we're very hopeful that the thoughtful proposal that you'll see from Representative Dorr will receive a good showing this next session, even with all the challenges you are facing. And we remain very hopeful that we can use the tool once authorized on this Lakewood Landing site. I think I'll stop there, open it up for any comments from Mayor and Council and questions from legislators.
Yeah, well, Senator Conway.
Yeah, I have basically a question on this. Of course, I presume you'll be seeking a Senate sponsor as well, but the question I have is, why can't the relocation of the transportation facility be managed inside the transportation budget? I mean, it just seems to me that we're trying to, if the transportation department, WASDA, is in agreement with this, why wouldn't they try to use transportation dollars to relocate themselves? Why do we have to use this tax increment financing to do this?
Great question, Senator. We have had several conversations with WashDOT making the plea that they prioritize the relocation of this facility. I will share that what they have told us is that as an agency, they really need to focus their priorities on the transportation investments needed throughout the state. So they're very focused on preservation and more pressing needs. I think they also have other maintenance facilities that are higher on their prioritization list for replacement. While the relocation of this facility would be a nice to have in their opinion, it's not an absolute need to have. And they're focusing their priorities on the need to have. And I think as you all are aware, there's also fairly significant revenue challenges within the transportation budget that make them coming up with this upfront funding to relocate the facility very challenging. That being said, we would not turn down an investment out of a transportation budget or a transportation revenue package to relocate this facility and help move this redevelopment forward. I think we're in the camp of being open to any and all solutions. The one that just seems most viable at this point is the proposal coming from Representative Dorr. As far as the Senate,
Could I follow up a question here? Where would they relocate this facility? Have you talked with them far enough along to know where they plan to put it? I mean, this obviously is a rather busy intersection, as we all know. And the intersection of these two freeways makes this very crowded. Where would they relocate if they had a choice?
City Manager John Caulfield would probably be the best one to answer that. They have been exploring options, and I understand that there's probably more than one satisfactory option, but some of those are time sensitive given the development pace in the county. John?
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, legislators. It's good to see you all, and thanks for being here this evening. So the short answer is we're actually working with WashDOT on several parcels down in what we call the Woodbrook Business Park, including a piece of property, a smaller piece of property that WashDOT owns down there. And so we're working on some land assemblage, as we speak. So there is a preferred location to relocate them to. We just got to figure out, really the missing piece is the financing.
if I may, Senator Conway, you had also asked about a Senate companion. Our impression was that legislators were being encouraged to not introduce companion bills. I'm sure Representative Dorr would entertain the idea of a companion, but the coalition behind it was really trying to honor the limitations you all have put in place in light of a virtual format session.
You're absolutely right. Thank you.
If there are no other questions or comments, we can move on to the next item on the legislative agenda, and I'll turn it over to Shelley for that.
Please.
Hi. So the next item on the legislative agenda relates to Western State Hospital and the Community Partnership Program. The document that Brianna has pulled up on the screen here is on page 6 of the packet of materials that you received. So just to provide a little bit of background on this program, since 2007, the city has operated the Community Partnership Program at Western State Hospital. And it provides a dedicated officer to respond to calls and complete investigations at the facility. It's since its inception has led to a reduction in calls for police at the hospital and a much stronger relationship between the hospital, the city, and the surrounding community. So the city's been able to operate the program at Western State because the state has dedicated funding to the program in each biennial budget since 2007. Since the program is not in statute, we have to come back every biennium and kind of make the case for why the program is worth continuing to fund. And in years past, we've asked for a small increase in the appropriation just to account for the increased costs of operating the program. With the state's budget challenges this year, we recognize that everyone is looking for ways to keep things really tight and on budget. So our request this year is for the same amount that's been included in the last 2 budget cycles, and that's $621,000. And that comes from the state's operating budget. We have been working with Western State as well as DSHS, and we have formally submitted the request to be included in the governor's budget. And so we look forward to working with each of you and having this appropriation included in the House and the Senate budget proposals. And with that, I will stop and see if there's any comments from council members or questions from legislators.
Any questions from legislators? No, I think this program has been successful. Unlike the fire district allocation, this is not an automatic, so we have to keep coming back and bugging you each session. But with the state safety concerns at Western State Hospital, I think it's an imperative that the state continue this. But we do have a strong prejudice.
Just thumbs up. Thank you.
Back to you, Brianna and Shelley.
Great. So the next item on the list is actually something that I'll turn back over to you, Mayor. This is a capital budget request that the city is supporting that is being made by the Living Access Support Alliance. So back to you, Mayor, to introduce the speaker for this topic.
Yes, hopefully we have the board chair of LASA, who's also the president of Clover Park Technical College, Joyce Loveday, in line. And if she's here with Jan Hutchins, the CEO of LASA, and they're booting up. So I don't sing, I don't dance. I'll try to cover the dead air time here while we get there. Dr. Loveday, great to see you. If we would take you off mute, and Jan, Joyce, we're joined here by 3 legislators and 1 legislator-elect who want to hear about the capital needs of LASA and how they might be able to help in the capital budget.
Thank you so much. It's a privilege to be here. We so appreciate the opportunity and that LASA is being part of the City of Lakewood's plan for the year. And we're pleased to be able to meet with Representative Kirby and Levitt and Senator Conway. And I've met all except Representative-elect Branowski. So I look forward to getting to know you through the year as well. So I'd like to start by providing a bit of background about LASA and then identifying what our need is and what we are focusing on through this capital request. My name again is Joyce Loveday, and I'm talking about LASA, which stands for Living Access Support Alliance. I'm a volunteer member from the Lakewood community. LASA has served the Pierce County community since 1989, when houses of worship came together to see how they could work together and create a safety net for those that were facing eviction or loss of their home due to housing insecurity. They found that many of those needs required minimal intervention at the time, such as one-time rental assistance or mortgage payment, or help with their utilities or other one-time needs. It soon became apparent, however, that housing for those experiencing homelessness was also needed. The goal of LASA was at that time, and continues to be, to use housing assistance as a tool along with case management to keep the family housed. Today, LASA houses from 50 to 75 families each year through several housing programs that include emergency shelter, rapid rehousing, both permanent supportive housing and permanent low-income housing. We also continue to provide case management, emergency rental, and utility assistance and other services. Also during this time of COVID, we're proud that LASA was called upon by the cities of Tacoma, Lakewood, and Fife to distribute $1.5 million in the form of emergency rent payment. And we were honored to participate and assist our community in this way. While LASA is in the process of acquiring land with the intent of increasing the amount of housing we're able to offer, today we come to you to let you know of our desire to increase the footprint of our Client Services Center. This will enable LASA to expand services to the homeless population in our community through providing a place to shower, to do their laundry, and to get out of the heat or cold during bouts of extreme weather. LASA's desire is to be there to provide services to help homeless individuals maintain their dignity and get back off the street as quickly as possible. The intent of the capital budget request is therefore to expand the Client Services Center in order to provide the laundry and showers for those without access, as well as to provide a warming and cooling center. We really do appreciate the investment the city of Lakewood has made in LASA in the past and continues to make, and the fact that they've included us in their capital budget request so we can continue to expand services and invest in our community. So thank you for considering the expansion of LASA as you consider your legislative priorities. And I am happy to respond to any questions or comments you may have.
Representative Levitt.
Thank you, Mayor. And this is more a question of the city, and it's great to see you, President Loveday, and got to see you earlier today as well. And but I think the project is wonderful and so desperately needed, and really I think the work of LASA is great. But this will be a question for the mayor and the city after the presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Brandstetter.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'd certainly like to just comment on the importance of this ask to Lakewood. In the greater Pierce County area, there are a variety of agencies that are mobilizing themselves and have been mobilized to assist folks who are homeless. However, it just so happens that the majority of them have their physical presence in the Tacoma area. And LASA is the most robust agency that is directly helping the homeless that is situated in Lakewood, and thus is a priority for us to want to be able to assist to be able to grow the range of services that they provide is close to home without particularly the need to commute down to Tacoma. So while we remain active in regional efforts around homelessness, LASA is really our hometown effort of the most robust nature.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Senator Conway, you're on mute. Senator Conway, you're muted.
The capital budget always has pots, dollars and grants that can be applied for. It just seems to me in the last several years, we've been putting a lot of money in the capital budget into housing. And I'm wondering if you've applied for any of those grants and those pots for this project, or has it fit into any of those grant programs that the capital budget provides?
Okay. And I'd like Jan to respond to that if she would.
Okay, thank you. So Senator Conway, we will be looking for pots of many, so to speak, for housing, because we do, we have some land that we plan on expanding some housing on. This, however, is for our Client Services Center, and really it is a little bit more difficult to find sources of funds for that type of project. I will tell you that to put laundry in, I have applied this fall for probably 18 different foundations and local agencies for funds for just a laundry room. And it was a no-go.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I guess we can move on, Brianna.
Sure. Are there no other questions, Rep. Levitt? I thought I saw you raise your hand
I
again.
do. I just didn't want to stop the presentation of President Loveday and Director Hutchins. But I do have a question. In HB 1406, and Brianna Murray and Shelley Helder will know that this is a bone of contention for me. They're $1406 were to allow housing projects or were to infuse dollars. I know that the city of Lakewood has not spent your $1406. I know that Pierce County has been sitting on nearly $1 million and looking for the right projects to fund. I've spoken with Pierce County. I've reached out to the city of Lakewood, to Pierce County, to the city of Tacoma, asking how $1406 have been spent or not spent and on what projects specifically. And so it seems to me that this could or would potentially be a project for House Bill $1406. I know that Lakewood doesn't have the same amount of resources options that Pierce County does, but I'm curious if you have looked or had any conversations about House Bill $1406 for this particular project.
Perhaps Mr. Caulfield would know if there are other inquiries, but I frankly don't know that it's been considered for this project. We're looking at it more as a attainable or affordable housing vehicle as opposed to a facility subsidy. So
I think we only have like $98,000. Is that right, Mayor? On the 1406 monies.
So actually, if I may, actually through second quarter, because the monies are brand new in 2020, and so through second quarter, of which I can give you an update on our current city's finances, second quarter of 2020 is I think we've collected about $16,000 or $17,000. So the money hasn't come rolling in yet, and by the end of this year, I think we'll have collected $50,000 or $60,000. About a year ago or so, the council had a very deliberative discussion on how to invest those monies and looked at different options and alternatives. And ultimately, the council decided to set those monies aside in partnership with our community development block monies in support of housing repairs and housing improvements within the community. And we're in the process of actually rolling that program out later this year and into early 2021. However, the council has also pointed out that, they would be willing and, to look at other options. I know, again, about a year ago or so, one of the discussion points was whether or not, cities and the counties wanted to, for example, leverage their monies to build a housing facility specifically for veterans. So there's been a lot of talk and a lot of discussion on how to use the 1406 monies, not just locally, but regionally. But at this time, the Lakewood City Council's direction is to invest those monies locally to, help people, again, with housing rehabilitation, housing improvements, things along those lines.
Thank you.
Oh, if I may also add, I just double checked to jog my memory to make sure I was recollecting correctly. But the language of 1406 does limit the funds to only being spent on affordable housing and new units of housing. And I'm not sure that this project specifically meets that definition. And I don't believe it would be eligible for the funds. I'd of course refer to the city attorney's interpretation of the statute, but my understanding of the intent of that revenue and the plain language reading of it, this project would not be eligible for those funds.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Right.
Thank you all for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us and adding to the program. We appreciate your efforts. And I would note that before the name was changed, it was Lakewood Area Shelter Association. So
that's correct.
It's a long history in Lakewood.
So Mayor, we didn't want to necessarily get rid of the word Lakewood. We wanted to get rid of the word shelter because of the bad connotations. Thank you.
Thanks. Back to you, Ms. Murray.
Okay. So in addition to supporting the LAHSA expansion, the city has two capital budget requests, one in the 28th district and one in the 29th district. And I'm going to start by reviewing the project in the 29th district, which is the Wards Lake Park improvements. And again, there's a document with details on this project on page 7 of your packet. And I'll note that kind of unique this year, there is also a video that goes into much more detail about the project, and that's linked in the document. So I'd encourage you to watch that. So Wards Lake is located on, or it's in the northeast corner of the city off of 84th Street, and it's less than a half mile from the Lakewood International District. It's in an area with a limited access to open space, and the park is currently underutilized given the amount of space that is available. The proposed improvements at the park will create a 1 mile ADA accessible loop trail around the lake. They'll expand and improve the critical wetland areas. It'll enhance the pedestrian safety at the main entrance. And then provide new recreational amenities, in particular, a pump track course, which there is not one that exists in the South Sound. So it would be kind of an attractive recreational destination. And then it would also include a 3-acre dog park. And others as well, but I just wanted to call attention to those improvements. All of the improvements at the park were informed through a community process. And it's a fairly extensive park improvement project. It costs a little under $2 million. And so the city has been applying for grants to help fund the project. Earlier this year, the city applied for a grant from the Washington Wildlife and Recreation Program, WWRP, as well as the Youth Athletic Facilities Program. And both of their grant applications were well ranked. However, both of those grant programs have a cap on the maximum amount that can be awarded. So there is still a funding gap of $250,000. Which is our budget request for this coming session. And I think I'll just brief the next capital budget request as well, and then turn it over to council and legislators for comments and questions. The second project is, as I mentioned, located in the 28th district, and it is ADA access improvements at American Lake Park. And again, there's a document in your packet. It's on page 9 with a link to a really informative video that city staff put together. American Lake Park is one of just 2 parks in the city with public access to water. And the park's current design does not allow for ADA access to the water. So the project would install a new concrete path down to the water from the parking lot. And because it's ADA, it would be no greater than a 5% grade. There would be a new retaining wall installed at the water, and then a ramp to be able to access the water from the path. Also would include a new restroom, a new drinking fountain, a new activity area. And I do think it's worth noting that the community surrounding American Lake Park has higher than the state and Pierce County averages for the rate of persons with disabilities. And that's according to the American Communities Survey. And you can see the data for that on page 10 of the packet. So the total cost for this project is $1.5 million. And again, the city has been really diligent in applying for grants to help make these park projects possible. So they applied for the Washington Wildlife Recreation Program, and then also the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account, or ALEA is how it's often referred to in Olympia. And again, they were really well ranked. So we're hopeful that all of those grant programs will be well funded. But as I mentioned before, they have a cap on their maximum award. So there is still a funding gap. And the funding gap again for this project is $250,000. So that is the request for the improvements at American Lake Park.
I'll just add as sort of a summary on both of these park requests that Shelley has briefed. I think throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, the population has really seen a lot of value in open space and parks, right? As folks are spending more time at home, they are also spending more time in their local and community parks. So these types of improvements seem ripe for investment in light of what our whole state has been, whole state and whole world has been working through since March. The other thing I'll just add is that what we've heard, what Shelley and I have heard, is that the capital budget is the one of the three budgets that does have revenue available within it. We have put together what I would consider to be fairly modest requests in these $250,000 amounts, given the amount of funding available in that budget. And just also to thank you for a lot of the work that you've done in previous years on other open space, other capital funding projects, which is one of the reasons we were prompted to put together a modest request for this upcoming session. So we hope that you find these to fit the political environment and our history of working together and are well suited for this upcoming session.
Yeah, Representative Levitt.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a question, and I love our parks. And a strong advocate of our parks and a frequent user of our parks. So I'm glad to see projects come forward related to parks. Question on the ADA need for American Lake and that area, and I've spent countless hours in that area and know that it's not accessible. But I'm curious if you've heard from the disability community and if you've done surveys or heard from that community about their concerns over a period of time.
Personally, it's just been anecdotal, but I know we have one regular attendee at our Coffee with the Mayor who is a veteran and a disability advocate, and he has expressed an interest in this project particularly, and I think on behalf of a committee which he chairs. But it's a fairly obvious need, as you know, if you go out and look at it. It's hard to get there from here. Even the very agile youth of the Commencement Bay Rowing Club have trouble negotiating the slope with their shells. So fixing that so that all our citizens can enjoy it is a fairly high priority.
Thank you.
Mr. Branstetter.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. And with respect to the American Lake Park ADA, I would like to point out that it does have a connectivity on the other side of the park. As we are finishing a major road project along Veterans Drive with the enhanced sidewalks and things to do that will actually run all the way from the entrance to the Veterans Hospital and connect with their sidewalk network to this park from a variety of ways. And so while this project looks to provide the ADA mobility within the park, the city has also made a significant investment in making ADA mobility to the park possible, to include an investment in restructuring and adding some spaces in that parking lot, and that potential users include some folks that are in residence at the Veterans Hospital, in that they'll now have that connectivity to be able to move in that way to do that. Whereas on the hospital site itself, actual access to the lake, because of the rather steep embankments along that question of the shore, is not as available to people who have mobility impairments.
I would note that a separate project in connection with the road project is enhancing the parking capacity there too. I don't think we should leave this subject without giving a special thanks to Senator Conway and Representative Kirby for their longstanding support of the parks in Lakewood. You know, it pretty hard being short of 25 years old as a city, creating, enhancing, maintaining parks in an urban area. They say God only made so much land, and he's not making any more. Well, when you incorporate as an urban area and then you want to create parks, it's extremely difficult. And I think that in the Springbrook area and Wards Lake in the 29th district, we've done just that. Those were unserved areas, and we want to continue that emphasis. We're continuing to expand both of those, and we've invested a substantial amount of time, effort, and money, both ours and on the grant side, on our 29th district park areas that were inherited from the county, but were not particularly well improved. So thank you again for all your efforts, and we hope that you can continue this session. Shelley, are we still with you?
Yep. So moving on page 11 of the packet are details about the next topic, which is a multimodal transportation study. So we know that transportation revenue is down, and that balancing the existing transportation budget, let alone making new investments in the budget, are going to be challenging this coming session. But we also know that both chambers are developing and will be considering transportation revenue packages. And so we just ask that $250,000 be allocated toward a multimodal transportation study. This is something for our legislators that will sound familiar, since this is something we've been working on for several years. And it's a request that's supported by many of our regional partners, including Pierce Transit and Sound Transit. Really, the study is aimed at identifying the best ways to take advantage of already funded infrastructure improvements and better move people through the South Sound. So it is a very straightforward request. So I will pause there and see if council has anything to add.
Senator Conway.
My question is on the capital budget side. So if you, when we're through with this, maybe you can come back to me. I want to ask a question on the capital side.
Okay, I'll make a note of that. Thank you, Senator. I don't see any other questions here. Shelley?
Okay, so now we're going to transition into talking about some of the items on the city's policy manual.
Shelley, before we do that, Senator Conway, why don't you ask your question on capital funding, since it's among our top legislative priorities, and let's discuss the legislative priorities in full before we move on to the policy manual. And just a reminder that, that recaps our legislative priorities. That's our primary focus this next session. And everything else that we'll talk about in the policy manual are additional items that we engage on. So, Senator?
The drop zone. I was curious if you're, we have put together, with Mari's good help, a bucket in the capital budget dealing with, those military projects adjacent to the bases and communities. And it was my understanding that the drop zone was in line for additional funding this year. And I'm wondering if John and Don can ask why that is not on their list, because the drop zone is a Lakewood issue, right?
Clear zone. Yeah.
The clear zone?
Yeah, the clear zone.
Yeah, we have a substantial pot of money and a target property that has run into an Army administrative hurdle that we're attempting to work out at this point. And so that's the next threshold there. I know John just today sent me a copy of a letter that is coming from Congressman Heck, I believe to the governor's office, supporting a a continued funding or additional funding for the state program to match the federal DSIP program, which can be used for different infrastructure programs. That might not necessarily be used for the clear zone. We have a commitment from the feds for a continuing program on the clear zone. The hang up right now is whether you can use some of the funds for relocation, which are generally required under state law. They're generally required under federal law, and somebody deep in the bowels of Army administration thinks that they aren't eligible for use on this particular program. So they'll come to their senses and we'll move forward, but it's.
So this budget cycle, you're not interested in that. Is that what I'm understanding, John?
Thank you for the Senator. Thank you for the question, Senator. So what you just heard from us were the City of Lakewood's priorities. However, transitioning, yes, the North Clear Zone and the Defense Community Compatibility Account, or Senator, I think is what you sometimes refer to as the BRAC account, is something that is wholeheartedly supported by Lakewood. However, it is with our SSMCP, our South Sound Military and Community Partnership hat on. And actually, that's a good transition because both Brianna and Shelley were going to talk about that here this evening. Okay. So I'll just put it right out there. What SSMCP, including the City of Lakewood, and as you know, the City of Lakewood has been a strong leader in helping stand up SSMCP dating back to its formation in 2010. Once again this year, supports the full funding of the DCCA, which totals $11 million. Actually, the mayor's correct. I sent out a copy of a letter that we received from Congressman Denny Heck expressing his support to Governor Inslee to fully fund this as part of the governor's budget proposal, which I think speaks volumes, given that he, of course, was the primary sponsor of the federal comparative program of this called the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. So yes, Senator, once again, we are all in on that. And that $11 million goes to I think it's 6 or 7 projects here in the Lakewood area, including the North Clear Zone. Also, as the mayor mentioned, we have come to an agreement with the Department of Defense, through the Department of Army regarding, obtaining over the next, 30 years, the $80 million in current dollars that's required to resolve that issue. However, as a part of that agreement, there is a required 20% match from, the locals, whether that's the city, the county, and the state. And so that's why this DCCA at the state level is so important. But again, Senator, to your question, yes, it is a key and a high priority, not just for Lakewood, but everybody that's involved in SSMCP.
Okay, thank you.
Just a short answer, Senator, is we asked for that with a different hat on, so it's not debited against the city's account.
Okay, well, I will transition us then into talking about some key items in the policy manual. And Senator Conway definitely jumped the gun a little bit. I will definitely mention the SSMCP priorities. As Brianna kind of clarified, there's kind of a distinction between our legislative agenda, which are the city's top priorities, really the issues that the city takes the lead on. And then policy manual issues where the city is playing more of a supporting role of issues that other entities take a leading role in. So we just wanted to call out a few items within the policy manual. It's a fairly extensive document, as I'm sure you have seen. And so we don't want to be here all evening, but I did want to mention the encouragement for full funding of the Washington Wildlife Recreation Program, the Aquatic Lands Enhancement Account, and the Youth Athletic Funds. All of these are programs through the state's capital budget. And the Recreation Conservation Office facilitates the grant application, the review and the interview process. And then they rank each project and recommend what level of funding should be included in the upcoming budget. The City of Lakewood staff has dedicated significant time to apply for and compete for these grants. And we're proud to be well ranked on the RCO list. I mentioned previously that several of the projects the city is working on at Wards Lake and American Lake are ranked within these grant programs. And so if they are funded at the recommended levels, the city stands to receive additional funding for these projects, which will help make the projects possible. The next item I want to mention is, of course, not new to anyone. It's fiscal support for COVID-19. So as I'm sure you know, city revenues continue to be impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic. And so as a city, we've identified a handful of actions the legislature could take to help with the response and recovery. They're outlined in detail on page 23 of the packet, which you can see there on the screen. I just want to highlight two. The first is to provide greater flexibility within existing restricted revenues. And I know that there has been a bill that the Association of Washington Cities has been working on that Lakewood is supportive of. And the second is to protect state shared revenues. We know in the past when the state has faced budget challenges, they've looked to state shared revenues as a source to balance the state's budget. And so we would just ask that you oppose any proposal that reduces the state share revenues.
I just, on the fiscal flexibility proposal that the Association of Washington Cities is working on, they're working closely with Representative Paulette and Representative Gaynor on that bill. And Rep. Levitt, I know that you have been actively engaged in several of those conversations. So greatly appreciate your involvement in that dialogue. And we're very hopeful that that bill can advance forward this next session. And Senator Conway, again, this is an example where we have a bill in the House, but not a Senate companion in an effort to try and honor the protocols being established through the virtual session. But I'm confident it'll make it over to the Senate.
Great. I just have two other topics that I'm going to cover, and then I'll pause for additional comments because I'm sure there will be some. The next topic I want to mention within the policy manual is adult family homes. And we just want to thank you and your predecessors for the time and the effort you've dedicated to listening to the concerns from the Lakewood community regarding adult family homes. In just the last few years, the 28th delegation in particular has introduced a handful of bills that take different approaches to responding to the challenges in Lakewood, but are helpful, and we're happy to have supported those efforts and will continue to do so. I think more than anything, we just want to highlight that we appreciate the work that's being done from our legislators and are happy to continue to work with you in that effort. And then the last topic that I'll mention from the policy manual and then open it up for discussion is the South Sound Military and Communities Partnership priorities. And as John mentioned, Lakewood is a founding member of the SSMCP. The organization has two requests for the upcoming session that Lakewood fully supports. The first is a robust investment along the I-5 corridor from Mounts Road, which is in DuPont, all the way down to Tumwater. And then the specific emphasis along that corridor is the Nisqually River Delta, which, according to a recent study that came out from the U.S. Geological Survey, shows that I-5 will be flooded by the Nisqually River in as soon as 17 years. So we support prioritizing this corridor for investment in the upcoming transportation revenue package. And ensuring that an alternative design of I-5 will eliminate the flood risk to the highway and also have the additional benefits of restoring salmon habitat in the Nisqually River Delta, as well as increasing capacity for the growing population in the South Sound. And then the second SSMCP priority is what Senator Conway was mentioning earlier. And it's a request for full funding, or $11 million, for the recently established Defense Community Compatibility Account. Thanks to Senator Conway and Representative Levitt and others, this program was established in 2019. And since then, Department of Commerce has solicited project applications, and we now have a ranked list of 7 projects that are recommended for funding. If the DCCA program is fully funded, the South Sound will benefit from it the most. The project list includes funding for housing project, the North Clear Zone property acquisition, some transportation investments, a water filtration for Lakewood Water District, and habitat conservation through the Center for Natural Lands Management. So there really are a variety of projects that are funded through that program, and all of them with the joint goal of supporting the military, the civilian communities surrounding military installations. So that was a lot of information. I will stop there and see if there's additional comments or questions.
Representative Levitt.
Thank you. Related to the capital budget request for Fort Silicon Park turf, I have to, in full disclosure, suggest I have a concern about that as a priority, given folks are suffering, our businesses are suffering, people are struggling with rental assistance, there have food security issues. It just strikes me as candidly a tone deaf request. So I just need to say, quite frankly, turf on a field where kids have played soccer on grass, gratefully for years. It's a beautiful park. My family uses it. We love the trails. Our kids have played soccer on those fields. I'm not saying and I love Mary and the Parks Department of Lakewood. I'm just suggesting that as a priority, given the suffering that is occurring in our community is probably not going to be a priority. And so I just don't want to set up any false hope for that project moving forward.
Well, you thanks for your candid concerns. You did mention rental assistance, and I'd like to use that as an example of how I think the legislature could help municipalities in general in the next session, anticipating that the federal government will pass money through to states. And as you know, the state held a lot of the CARES Act funding close to the vest. But for example, Lakewood is 60% rental housing. There's a tremendous need that isn't met both on the part of the tenants and on the part of the landlords who can't make their mortgage payments. When the money comes from the state, I'll give you an example from the county. The county is running a program for rental assistance with the money it got directly at 100% AMI and a December 30th deadline. Late in the game, the state comes through and said, here's another $10 million, but you have to run it at 80% AMI, and it's only till November 30th. Those type of constraints cause difficulty and much less effective delivery of services to the people that need them in a big hurry. So the more you can do to pass the money through to the municipalities, even if it's in general areas that say, okay, yeah, you think of housing, but mortgage assistance is really tough to administer. And the need, frankly, is much different, because if you put a cap of 100% or 125% AMI on mortgage assistance, most people with mortgages had to have much higher income than that in order to qualify for the mortgage. So if an artificial cap goes on, you can't really get rid of the money. So that's just an example of where I think that at the local level, we can craft programs and react more swiftly to the needs of our community, which, some other community may only have 25% rental housing. And so a per capita distribution of rental housing money fully satisfies their need and may only put a dent in Lakewoods. So the more flexibility we can have at the local level, even with those pass-through funds, the better. And I know that the legislature's anxious to weigh in on the use of federal funding and COVID policies. So it's just something we hope you consider as you continue your
Absolutely.
efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Mr. Whalen.
Thank you. I just had a clarifying question to respond to the concern raised with regard to the turf field project. I know this has been a Parks Department proposal for some time. As I understand it, the request would be to support the Youth Athletic Fund, which wouldn't necessarily take from housing activities or other activities related to COVID, but maybe I'm missing something there in the source of the funding and the request here. Because I agree, we don't want to be tone deaf, but if there's a source of funding that's unrelated to what you're referring to as a concern with regard to the COVID restrictions and the issues, and I want to be clear with that.
Yeah, and if I can just clarify, we had put together the request last legislative session around the ball fields, and we heard the feedback loud and clear that that was not an appropriate legislative priority. So you'll notice it is not identified as a capital funding request on the agenda.
Right.
But city staff did apply to grant programs that are dedicated to that type of program. Those grant programs do rely on state funding. Of course, we'd like to see those grant programs funded, but that's part of your larger task before you on how you do budget
Right.
prioritization.
Got it. So I'm trying to get educated about that, Brianna. So
Yeah.
those grant programs will only be funded, obviously, if the state has adequate resources to fund them. And if funded, this would be a request through that particular fund then, right?
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Senator Conway.
I have a question on COVID money that the city received this past 7 months. Did you receive a direct allocation of COVID dollars from the federal government?
Not of CARES Act funding. You had to have a population of 500,000 or more. So the only direct funding was to Seattle, King County, and Pierce County.
Okay.
Or unincorporated Pierce County.
But Pierce County didn't distribute any money to Lakewood, did they?
In limited amounts.
Yeah.
And the state passed money through to Lakewood. And then in addition to that, as part of the economic aid coming from the federal government, there was CDBG and home funding that was supplemental to the normal annual allocation, and we're an eligible jurisdiction for that because we have more than 50,000 people. And so
on the rental assistance, what happened is they distributed money for rental assistance, but had that parameter around it that didn't work for Lakewood. Is that what I'm hearing here?
Well, what I'm saying is the more flexible it is, the quicker we can react and the more people we can help more effectively. If it comes down, it was just an example of what the restrictions do when, the county sets a parameter, the states are more restrictive. Lakewood gets to set its own, but it's only a limited amount of money and it's later. So it's, if the money comes through in the form of a check and says you have to use it for COVID response, that's ultimately the best for the city. But even if it's in buckets, the greater flexibility we can have with where we can pour the water out of those buckets, the better.
Right. So can you give me a figure on COVID assistance then that you've received? Because that can be a great argument. If Lakewood has not received a fund that reflects its per capita.
Well, what's it, John? John Caulfield will have that number. It's like $1.7 million in CARES Act funding through the state.
It's actually 2.685 million, and the monies were invested primarily in the area of rental assistance, utility assistance, as well as business assistance. Also, a number of social and human services agency, including child care facilities.
Right.
We were pretty effective in getting those monies out there. In addition, as the mayor pointed out, the city did apply to Pierce County for some of their money because they were a direct recipient. And so we were able to receive $171,000 from the county. And we use those monies primarily in our city facilities and city parks so that everything is hands off. Like, for example, when you go into a latrine or a restroom and things along those lines. Oh, also the 2.685 million, we also allocated a portion of those monies in support of our public partners. For example, we provided, I think, over $200,000 to West Pierce Fire and Rescue for a number of issues that they had, the library, the food banks, quite frankly, the list went on.
Well, John, if you can make that information available to me, you know, there's a number of Lakewood projects and it'd be good to have that information. I think the legislature does have a concern about letting the governor establish all the rules around the distribution of these COVID dollars. And I think it probably will be a conversation in the committees on trying to have some kind of a legislative role in the distribution of those dollars. And I'll just let you know that, you know, we're all of us here are sitting here hoping there'll be a second distribution from the federal government, but it seems like we're still in a log jam there. It doesn't seem to be happening, but I want to ask another question along the finance. Do you get any kind of special help from the defense community at all because of the JBLM proximity to you?
Well,
do they give you any kind of what I call mitigation money? School districts get help from the federal, you know, because of the number of kids that are in the defense established. I'm just wondering if you get any other kind of dollars like that from the defense side.
Well, there's no direct mitigation money, although South Sound Military and Community Partnership has been successful in obtaining a continuing stream of grants for different programs, that projects that where the community is impacted or the community can assist the base. So the most direct impact federal funding has in that regard is Office of Economic Adjustment grants to South Sound Military Community Partnership.
Okay. I'm aware of those. Thank you.
Anyone else have a comment? Is that the conclusion of your presentation, ladies?
Yes, yep, that's all the topics that we had to go through this evening.
Thank you very much.
Questions in the packet, you know how to get a hold of us.
Yeah.
Did we talk about adult family homes? Did I miss that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So okay.
Missed it.
If I can just add, you know, we're going into this virtual legislative session. It's going to be challenging for all of you as legislators and equally challenging for us as lobbyists. Shelley and I have always really appreciated the open door policy that you all have had in years previous. So we're looking forward to an open text and phone call policy with us as we go throughout this legislative session. And I want to just reemphasize that we are here as a Lakewood team to be your resource as much as we're also here, you know, advocating for the Lakewood community. So if bills come up that you want us to provide feedback on or questions from constituents or anything like that, just recall that we stand ready to be a resource as well. So
I see that Representative Levitt has her hand up, and I think that's a great segue. Before we run out of time here, I would like to give our elected representatives an opportunity to if they'd like to tell us what their priorities are for the legislative session and how they think that they can serve the community in the upcoming 120 days or however long you end up being at home, glued to your computer, I should say. Representative Levitt.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you for the presentation and the opportunity to meet with you, and I just appreciate all the work that you guys are doing. There were a couple items in your very long packet on predatory lending and foreclosure issues and proposals for legislation. I know Ms. Murray has been working with a group of folks regarding that, and so I did share that packet or share those clauses rather with Representative Orwell, We've been meeting on foreclosure issues. And so just know that I've shared that with staff. So if you have particular language or if you're tracking on those, I'm happy to engage with you in that conversation. And then the pathway, the bike pathway project along towards JBLM, I'm interested in engaging in that conversation as well. I candidly was very surprised that there was an amendment dropped at the end of session with no conversation with members of the 28th delegation, or at least 2 members of the 28th delegation about that. And since then, have had conversations with WashDOT and others, and just to say that the information that I've received is a little bit different than the narrative as painted in the proposal. So just know that I'll be continuing in conversations on those. And as it relates to priorities, absolutely, Mayor Anderson, your comments were spot on regarding rental assistance, both for our tenants as well as our landlords who need to pay their mortgages so that we can keep affordable housing in stock. Our units, are just nowhere where they need to be. City Manager Caulfield on veterans housing, that has been a priority for me. And had COVID not hit in the way that it did, and my time was taken up with helping folks navigate unemployment security department and getting their benefits that they have earned, I would have been talking about veterans housing in Lakewood. And that's why I was keening in very closely on the $1,406 and the $900,000 for Pierce County, and have had conversations with a variety of different folks about veterans housing, because we don't have nearly enough. And I think Lakewood would be a beautiful partner in terms of a location, not necessarily providing the services and the wraparound services that are needed that go along with that housing, but housing is continued to be a concern. And then helping, of course, our small businesses and economic recovery, both for workers and our businesses, is a focus of mine and will continue to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Conway, would you like to share anything?
Well, I think Ari's kind of touched. I think, the response to the COVID problem, we haven't been in session since this problem erupted. And so the ways in which we can help people manage the COVID is probably going to be the huge priority down there, whether it be the individuals, small business people, self-insured people, et cetera. There's all kinds of folks whose life have been upside down by this COVID, and we've got to figure out a way to get them right side up. And of course, I serve on the healthcare committee, so we're going to be probably directly involved in once this antidote starts distributing itself across our communities. I'm sure there will be an awful lot of concern about who gets it and when and where. And I think we're looking for a partnership with our cities on that, and that'll probably be a major issue down there. I wanted to say something on the virtual legislative session. It's going to be different. It will really be different. And I think I'm trying to figure out how to align my help in my office so that I can get the text messages on bills that have been introduced that hurt you. Let's face it, there are always a number of bills that make its way through the process that the cities may not like because it doesn't really help them. And I just hope that we maintain some kind of a nice ability to communicate with each other, because a lot of these changes come up awfully sudden, and I don't think there'll be as much sudden change in bills as there has been in the past, but it will be a challenge when we get down to the final budget of making sure that we are communicating well with each other. And it's going to be, we won't be able to do Zoom calls. It's all going to be phones and texting in terms of information coming to us. And as legislators, we're getting information not only from the city of Lakewood, but from the city of Tacoma, as well as other groups throughout the state. So we have got to figure out a way to make sure that we have good communication with you. And I know that Shelley and Brianna will be working on this, because the legislative decision, if Senator or Representative Kirby is here, he would comment on this as well. He's going to try to stay in Olympia, even though the building will be closed. least that's what he said at one point. And you know, it is a process, and it's going to be altered this year. So we're going to have to make sure that when it's all done, that we've done the best for everyone here. So I just urge you to we need to work on how we communicate with each other.
Thank you, Senator. And with that, we'll go to Representative Kirby and get firsthand where he does plan to hang out for the legislative session. Representative Kirby. Who has his camera off, which is an indicator that he's going to be hard to reach for our contract lobbyists. So,
oh, there he is.
I am. I found myself.
So would you like to take this opportunity to share what some of your priorities or thoughts for the next legislative session are?
Well, yeah, that's kind of interesting. We spent the whole day today in the House, Democrats talking about things like that. You know, being a committee chairman and one of the more senior members, I'm being called upon to try to help manage things. And really what I'm going to be spending a lot of my time doing, I think, especially is managing expectations, because well, okay, I'm just going to blur it out again. I do it every other meeting. I might as well do this one too. I'm highly skeptical that our system that they're cobbling together for a virtual session is even going to work. And I mean at all. You know, we've had a couple of practice sessions. I think I have another one tomorrow that I'm signed up for. I can't remember exactly which, all the days are running together, but so far I haven't had one that has been successful yet. They've been fraught with problems, just fraught. It literally didn't work. So, you know, they do for some and not for others, but the fact of the matter is, where does that take us? Well, that takes us into something. There are now, Senator Conway was there, and I was there for the last year of the tie in the House of Representatives, where we had an equal number of Democrats and Republicans. And what this, I think, is going to resemble that. And when we did that, the way we got through it, we passed legislation, but only whatever it took to kind of keep the doors open, things upon which there was a great deal of agreement, both sides of the aisle, both sides of the rotunda. And I think that's the only thing that we're going to be able to do during this session, unless things change pretty substantially here in the next, you know, month and a half or so. So, you know, I guess that's kind of how, you know, what I'm spending my time doing is getting the legislation and the committee that I chair ready. And again, you know, every year we have a, you know, bunch of new people who whose intent, you know, all last summer was to come down and change the world. And this is, well, disappointment is going to be a good part of their lives, I think, starting in January. So, you know, that I don't have very many expectations is what I'm telling you. And, you know, it is going to fall on some of us who've been there a while to try to keep the peace and keep everybody as happy as we possibly can.
Representative Kirby, you certainly got Representative-elect Bronowski's hopes up.
Yeah. And with that, we'll segue to Representative Bronowski, who Representative-elect Bronowski, who I still haven't had the opportunity to meet in person, which is anybody who's come into your sphere within the last 9 months. But Mike McGovern says you're a really good guy, and I'm supposed to get along with you.
Well, yeah, Mr. Mayor, actually, we have met in the past, not in this capacity. You know, I spent 20 years in the fire department, and you know, we've crossed paths many times, in the past. So, but I don't expect you to remember me at all. I'm just, hey, we all wear the same shirt, right? I mean, we all wear uniforms. So.
Hey, well, you know, we consider ourselves a firefighter family, so we got that going.
Yeah, no, yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, City Council, for this opportunity, and thank you for being so thorough with the information and the city's priorities. You know, I envision this relationship to be a partnership where we work together to best serve our community and best serve our city and our state. And I look forward to building that working relationship with all of you. You know, I've got a lot to learn, and I understand, you know, Representative Kirby. Yeah, we are not going to change the world. We got an unprecedented crisis that we're still having to deal with. So COVID-19 response will be one of my biggest priorities. I want to make sure that we continue to keep healthcare workers safe and healthy, for example, so they can continue to do their important work, just as important now as it ever has been, and to include a ton of other things that I'd like to work on to make sure that we get through this pandemic as quickly as possible, although it's still going to be long and drawn out, and I have no illusions about that. But I will do my absolute best. I will put forth all of my effort into making things work, and I look forward to working with all of you. So thank you very much again.
Well, thank you. I see Representative Levitt's hand up. If that's intentional, we'll give you the last word. It's not intentional. It's down.
Apologizing for my barking dog. If you heard her, she's crying and barking, ready for her walk. So apologies for the noise.
Well, we'll keep this on schedule. We schedule it for 7:30, and we're at 7:26. And I just like, on behalf of all my contemporaries on Lakewood City Council and the people of Lakewood, I'd like to thank you for your past and future service. We've had a great working relationship with our delegation in the legislature. The things that are important to city government are important to all people, and there's not a lot of political philosophy that goes into most of them. We, I think, have progressed nicely on our infrastructure, public safety, our parks, and trying to get the human services that the city's limited involvement it causes us to try. Well, we aren't what I'm trying to say is we aren't necessarily the human services provider. The state has a role, the county has a role that is a lot larger, but we don't ignore that. We have our set aside. We're dealing with our CARES money, but we focus a lot on infrastructure, public safety, and our parks, and try to do in our lane what we can do well. And you've been a great help in that. And you can see from our legislative agenda that sometimes we step out into larger issues like national security and flooding of the main arterial, potential flooding of the main arterial on north-south and I-5 down at the Nisqually Delta. So we play a little bit above our weight, and I think our legislative delegation has too. So thank you again. And Mr. Caulfield, do you have anything to add that we've missed? If not,
I just have one, Mr. Mayor, if I may, and this will be for later, but I'll be asking for some information. You brought up public safety, and certainly police accountability and police reform is going to be a focus of our attention this upcoming session. And I'm certainly interested in what Lakewood and the Police Department of Lakewood is doing around, centering around 940 policy and making sure that they have a robust policy to follow the protocol that's been expected, and reform that's going, dash cams, body cams. And so you'll be seeing an inquiry to the city. And so I just want to give Mr. Caulfield a heads up so he's not surprised, and he's so gracious to constantly respond to the inquiries that we do. But that will be a major focus of our legislative session, and certainly given the challenges in Lakewood, it'll be an interest of those of us from myself. I'll speak for myself in the 28th. It'll be an interest, given that Lakewood's part of the 28th of what you're doing and how you might be supportive of those efforts. Thank you.
We'd invite you out to meet with our police chief and police department, see what they do, how we interface with community, and how we train and have adopted many policies that are quite progressive in the way we interact with folks, and why our use of force is very low. So with that, we are at 7:30. And I thank you again for coming, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you.